Well, hello, and welcome to yet another completely unprofessional interview. Scott here, also known as OrcusDorkus, and this is going to be my second interview for this channel. I do appreciate all of you who have answered back to me. I think for the month of September, I wanted to try something new. Most of you who know this channel know me for doing my unboxing first impressions. Occasionally get my kids and my family on here for a bit of fun and and other things, but never really done too many interviews, as I tend to do that with the Titterpigs podcast that I co-host. But Titterpigs gets to be a little bit busy, and of course, when you have a co-host, timing and scheduling can be a bit of an issue. And so I just wanted to try something a little different here, and maybe have a little more intimate one-on-one interview with pretty much anyone who wants to come on and chat about gaming, chat about stuff that they want to promote, anything like that. That's what I enjoy doing, like promoting the hobby to all of you all out there. So, excuse me. So, again, thank you all for answering, my call on Twitter and the other social medias. And I would like to also extend a bit of gratitude to who I'm going to, obviously introduce, that you can see here. So for my first September interview, I have here Michael Ross from the RPG Academy, who was kind enough to give me a little shout out and said he'd be more than happy to come on here and have a little chat. We're going to talk about the RPG Academy podcast, which I also believe that you do have a YouTube channel too that's associated with that. Talk a little bit about Michael himself, and then roll into a Kickstarter that he's promoting, Acadecon, which is a 3D convention. Sorry.
There's no R.
Oh, okay.
Acadecon. Everyone gets it wrong. It's a terrible thing. But yeah, so it's not arcade, it's Acadecon. It's like Academy.
Okay,
like
got it.
Yeah, but when it makes sense, but everyone says that, so don't worry about it.
Oh, no, and I will immediately toss out the fact that I'm dyslexic, so I mean, there we go. I mean, and
well, everyone gets it wrong, not just you. Like literally, I've been on the news before and they've said it wrong.
So, okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, this shouldn't be so bad, but I do appreciate you. Feel free to correct me if anything I mispronounce, because I do it all the time. But let's go ahead and dive in. So sure. Yes, introducing Michael Ross. Michael.
Hey, that's me.
That is you, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on to my little channel to help.
Absolutely thrilled to be here.
Excellent. No, this is good. This is the format that I tend to thrive in. As much as I do enjoy my little unboxings and doing the first impressions of the games and whatnot, I tend to I enjoy talking with other people about the hobby and aspects of the hobby, and I can do this until the sun sets. This is my thing, and it's happened.
It's a lot of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it happens. We do have side chats with friends, and it'll go 3-4 hours and whatnot. So, but anyways, yes, Michael from the RPG Academy. For those who aren't aware of this, I'm pretty sure most people should be by now, but they do. The RPG Academy is a podcast and also YouTube channel that has been around for some time, and
some would say too long.
That's, I mean, I mean, one of the things that, as far as I'm concerned, is when I decided to do the podcast and the YouTube channel, one of the things that my kids said is like, oh, Dad, do you really need to? Because this is something that if you're in your 60s or 70s and you're still doing this, we're gonna unsubscribe. So make sure you don't do it too long. Get through your midlife crisis and move on. So, but no, the RPG Academy is a very popular podcast that has been around for quite some time now. And one of the things that I'd like to say about it is, and that's wonderful about the RPG Academy is you focus on several different aspects of the hobby. It's not just an actual play. It's not just a review channel. It's not just a kind of general discussion channel about the hobby, but you seem to cover all aspects of it. And that is absolutely wonderful. You can definitely find, pretty much anything that you're interested within the hobby on there. I mean, so
yeah, some might say too much stuff. We try to come at things from all the kinds of different angles. Yeah. I think if you listen to our show, you'll find something that you enjoy. Okay. I hope so anyways.
Yes. Oh, no, most definitely. But before we kind of take a tangent, and we're going to get back to maybe a little bit of the history of the RPG Academy and how it came about and whatnot. For those who aren't familiar with you yourself, What I'd like to do is I tend to follow a similar trope that a lot of people do. Is any guests that I have on here, likewise on the Titterpigs podcast, we kind of like to know our guest history about
Mhm.
what got you in to tabletop role playing games or just games in general, because everyone's story is different, and I feel personally that they're always interesting.
Mm.
So
Okay.
so Michael, take us back. Take us back
All right.
to
I'm happy to share. And there'll be a kind of recurring theme if we stick around long enough on how other people get me into things, but then I become obsessed and take them over.
yes.
And that's exactly how my gaming history started. I want to say roughly 12, but
Hmm.
I'm at the age where everything was either last week or when I was 12. So I might have been 8, I might have been 10, but I think it was somewhere around the age of 12,
Right.
which for me is a very long time ago. I'm an old man.
Hmm. Me too.
But me and my best friend,
Yep.
Brandon, his mother drove us to I'm from a very small town in rural Kentucky. Like we didn't
Right.
have a bookstore in our town.
Okay.
So we had to go to the next town over to go to the bookstore.
Hmm.
So we were up there, and I've been an avid reader since I was very, very young. I love books. And it was my friend Brandon who goes, "Hey, I want to buy that." And he points at what I'm pretty sure was the Mincer Redbox edition for D&D.
Yep.
I get them a little bit confused as to, I know there's like different versions. I think it's the Mincer one.
Hmm.
And he goes, "I want to buy that, but I don't have enough money. Will you, go in halvesies with me?" Basically, I had no idea what D&D was. I never heard of it, no concept, but is my best friend asking me for help? Of course, I'll throw in like 10,
Right.
12 bucks, whatever it was. So we bought it. We go and get into his mom's car. We're sitting in the back seat. He opens up the red box. And to this day, I don't know if it was intentional or just happenstance, but if you remember the old red box, it come in booklets. You had a DM booklet or GM booklet, and you had a player booklet.
Hmm.
He hands me the DM booklet, and I've been running games ever since.
Oh wow. Yeah, no. So you have one of the classic Forever GM stories. Some people are, it's kind of like it's kind of like being a hero. Sometimes you are born one, and other times it's thrust upon you.
Exactly.
And that tends to be the case for a lot of Forever GMs. I tend to be one myself. I do play when I can, but I do prefer to GM, and I know a lot of people like that. But yeah, it's there's so many Forever GMs that wherever they started, they're the ones who it's like it's the scene from life.
Mm.
Hey, I'm not going to GM. Well, I'm not going to GM. Hey, let's get Michael. Michael will run anything.
Exactly. Pretty much. That's about it. And I do. I mean, I absolutely enjoy it. I love running games. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. I do enjoy playing as well, of course.
Hmm.
But yeah, I love being behind the screen. I'll run just about anything, anytime, anywhere. I love it.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. So we'll move forward a little bit here. So obviously your introduction is Dungeons and Dragons. As you progressing, as we tend to do, we tend to focus on certain things. Or most of my experiences is people will find a game, their usual introduction, and they will stick with it for some time. A bit of brand loyalty, for lack of a
Mhm.
better term. But was there an eventuality, as you're playing with your friends, or maybe later in life, that you moved away and discovered something different, that realized, oh hey, there's more to this than just D&D, than just dungeon crawling, kicking down the doors, killing the orcs, trying to grab your gold and get out of there. And was there a particular game that that made the transition from D&D to the ever expanding world of RPGs for you?
So yes and no, I
Okay.
guess. So the second RPG that we ever played was the old TSR Marvel Face Rip
Yep.
edition.
Yep.
That was my second RPG, and we kind of went back and forth between D&D and that game quite a lot. Again, we were at that age, we love comic books, and this was long before Marvel movies of today where they were terrible. Though some people still think they're terrible, I don't. Whatever. And but we kept going back to D&D, and I would try things like I think as the game master, like, I was always trying to find the perfect game. I'm
Mm,
at the age now, I realize it doesn't exist. So I would try a new game. Like we bought GURPS. I don't think
yes.
we ever actually played GURPS. We tried to make characters, and that like none of us were smart enough. I tried the old DC Heroes game.
Hmm.
Never actually got that to the table. The old Palladium TMNT game.
Hmm.
So we experimented with other games, but we basically always came back to D&D or Marvel. Those are the two that we actually got to play various times.
Right.
And then as we because I think that maybe advanced first edition advanced was already out when we bought that basic,
Right.
but we started with the basic. Again, I'm from very small rural town, Southeast Kentucky. Gamer shame, satanic panic was absolutely a thing I dealt
Yes.
with. So we told nobody that we played. Like, it was absolutely just me and my 3 friends. We would play together. We didn't play with anyone else.
Hmm.
And every now and then we would, you can kind of sniff each other. Like, you start to recognize the other.
Hmm.
So after a little bit of time, we started making a couple connections, and some other people introduced us to AD&D and the second edition as we got into high school and then college. Like, I kept playing. So really I kept coming back
Okay.
over time to D&D. And it wasn't until the podcast, which is going on like 13, almost 14 years now,
Hmm.
where I really expanded my horizons
Okay.
and started playing lots and lots of different games. And I say that D&D is still probably my favorite. It's still the one I play the most and run the most, but I enjoy it so much more now that I play other games. And I absolutely steal things from other games, techniques, mechanics, just
Hmm.
ideologies, thought process, that makes my D&D games better for me to run into play. But really it was, for like the first 20 some years, I basically played D&D and Marvel with the same 3 people.
You're right. Well, that's impressive. So, unlike some of us, you didn't have a really extended amount of downtime during that. I mean, I know a lot of us, kind of tend to hit a wall with either school, relationships, kids and family and
Yeah.
whatnot.
So all through grade school, high school, and even into college,
Hmm.
played really regularly, pretty consistently.
Right.
Right after college, I got married, and then we moved out of state for my first real job.
Hmm.
And I kind of thought, well, time to put away childish things. So I probably took like a year off or maybe, but then this is when third edition came out,
Mm.
maybe 3, I think it was 3rd edition. And
Right.
basically the company I worked for, I had people who worked for me. I was a manager. That's a long story. We'll get into that. But anyway, one of the guys that worked for me came in one day with a 3rd edition book and was like reading on their break. And I was like, hey, what's that? We started chatting. And before you know it, I'm out buying all the 3rd edition books and then 3.5 books. And the guy who worked for me, we weren't allowed to like hang out because employer type thing, but
Right.
he actually got promoted within a few weeks of that. And so I started playing with him. And then I played 3rd edition for years, moved. And when I moved, like, okay, well, I don't want to start a new group again. I guess I'm done now.
Hmm.
And then 4th edition came out. So I went and bought all the 4th edition books. And then I'm like, okay, this sounds cool and different. So I'll play 4th edition.
Hmm.
I actually, with a few people, I think 4th edition is a lot better than a lot of people think, but it did get very tiresome to me quickly
Okay.
because of all the other people who never played before.
Hmm.
Like, if 4th edition was the only game you ever played, I think that game gives you a different idea of how the game works than I did. Like, I was
Right.
able to bring in all this other stuff I knew.
Hmm.
So I kept running into people I would play with had only played 4th edition. They played it in a way that I didn't want to play it. So I kind of fell out of it again. And then we decided to start a podcast. And guess what? 5th edition, basically the D&D next playtest started right as we started our
Oh,
podcast.
really? Wow.
And so I've been right back into it. So every time I would dip a toe out, basically the new edition seemed to bring me back in.
That's amazing, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I was about ready to ask your opinion on 4th edition because yes, 4th edition tends to be there's a dividing line between that game, and there's people who lived through it and people who discovered it, and I'm on the side where I never played it. I did pick up the books and read it, but I never got an opportunity to play it when it came out. And yes, it's a different beast altogether, but I never really understood, where the vitriol came from regarding it. And there's other people like that. I mean, there's people that feel that 4th edition, even though they played the other games, 4th edition is still their go-to. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but it is like so many things do in the circle of life in the hobby. 4th edition is making a comeback in certain circles because people are going back to it, and younger generations are discovering, like my son and his friends. They are currently on a tear of discovering old editions of games, or
Mhm.
they're playing 3.5 amongst other games. They haven't done anything with 4th edition yet, but they went through the general, well, I'm going to try 5th edition, and they're in a wonderful golden age right now of
Oh, yeah.
if they're bored with 5th edition, or they don't want to do anything else, that was their introduction. oh my God, the world has opened up to them.
Oh,
They're
absolutely.
going crazy. They're what would have been an RPG club at my high school, when I was of that age, it really wouldn't have been a club. It'd be kind of like what you described, 3 or 4 kids secretly getting together to
Yep.
either A, avoid the satanic panic, or just B, avoid, the aspects and the of their friends of people knowing that they're playing D&D,
Right.
because God knows you didn't want that to come out.
Oh, no. Yeah.
But they had their club right there, is over 80 kids in that club,
Mm,
and it's just amazing. But so yes, yeah. So we 4th edition. Yes,
yeah.
I'm glad that
Just
you enjoyed
and
it.
to circle back that
Hmm.
for me, I think it's about marketing.
Hmm.
Like, I really think it was marketed poorly. And again, my issue, having played it for quite a while,
Hmm.
is that if you just read those books and you don't know what D&D is, like
Hmm.
you've never played it before, and those are your introduction, it absolutely plays like a skirmish game.
Right.
It is a minis skirmish game. Really good version of a mini skirmish game if you want to play a fantasy version of D&D that's really tactical
Hmm.
and mini driven. But if you've never played before, I don't think it does a good job of explaining the role play part.
Right.
So if that's your introduction, in my experience, anecdotally, I played a few times at game stores and stuff. People tended to play it very much like a tactical mini skirmish game, where they would like maybe sometimes talk in character, but it wasn't like a role play game.
Right.
But again, me, I had 20 years of experience. I role played. I'll role play Monopoly if you want to. But that was what I kept running into with the people who only played 4th edition.
Hmm.
they it was like a mismatch match of expectations. And not to say they were wrong, but my expectations of what we would do was different than what theirs was. And so we did kind of oil and water didn't quite mix in.
Right.
And I think if they marketed it differently, that game would have been wildly successful. But they didn't. But there's so much of 4th edition hidden in 5th edition. If you really read the books and figure out
Yes.
what you're doing, there's so much bleed over. But they did a better job of weaving it with the role play and not just the minis version. So that's part of the reason why I think 5th edition works so well.
Yes, no, I agree, and that's and they don't necessarily, like you said, they don't necessarily wear it on its sleeve, but if you're familiar with it, you do see aspects of it, and other editions, mints in there. And that's
Oh yeah.
what made 5th edition very accessible as it came out, and continues to do so. And I agree. You had the experience to bring role playing aspects into it, which may not have been the focal point of it all. And I could see, it's almost like if you get a group together to play something like BattleTech or something, and which may have a little tiny bit of role playing in there, but you're there to do, mash robots or mash, orcs and knights together, and they're like, well,
Mhm.
can we just get to the stuff? I want to use my
Right.
powers and my skills and whatnot. So no, yes, that's it. And people listening, if you haven't, had an opportunity to check out 4th edition, do so. I don't know if they have it available in PDF on drive through yet or not, but if you can pick up, a couple copies of the book to discover it, do so now, because every day all these old games are getting more and more ridiculously expensive. Um, so excellent. So then that's going to bring us then. So you have your history of games, and you expanded out slightly, but then comes the situation where you decide to do a podcast, which is not something that, talking from experience, is not something that comes naturally. No one sets out to go, well, I'm going to do a podcast. It usually just it's a circumstantial event where you go, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe I'll try it out. And next thing you know, you're moving on from a cheap webcam to nice microphones and other crap.
Mhm.
And, your wife's going, what are you spending this money on for? It's like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Exactly.
But what was the onus that brought about the RPG Academy at this time then?
So at this time, I was working for another company. I moved companies as you do, anyways.
Hmm.
So it's that thing again where I started same situation. Someone who worked for me, and I just got the sense that like this guy, he's part of my tribe, right?
Hmm.
And so over like months of like casual conversations at work, it slowly came up that he would be interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And so I was like, "Hey, just so you know, I've played like almost at this point more than half my life. Like I like to think I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I'd love to introduce you." Uh, as before, he ended up getting promoted not too long ago, so we became peers and became cool. Whatever. I don't really
Hmm.
care anymore, but at the time it was a big deal.
Right.
So we started playing D&D. and this is 4th edition.
Mm-hmm.
And we played like maybe 2 or 3 months, and he's like, "You know what? I don't think this is for me, but, thanks for showing me." And we're still friends, we were still friends, whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
he just stopped playing. And then like 6 months later out of the blue, he just comes to me one day, he's like, "I think I wanna run a game.
Ah.
Like, I don't think I wanna play, but I think I wanna run a game, but I don't know how.
Mm.
So would you like handle the rules and just let me kind of tell the story?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, would love to do that." So we had a couple other friends that we kind of knew, and basically I built a table of players that I knew would be accommodating to
Yeah.
him. They would be very laid back, no, min maxing rules lawyer type of stuff. And I said, "You tell us what's going to go on. Anytime the rules need to be brought up, I will tell you what to do." And so as he's preparing, he starts listening to podcasts about running games. And in particular, he credits Fear the Boot was the one that he really enjoyed listening to. And then it was his idea. He said, "Why don't we start a podcast where we kind of chronicle you teaching me how to run a game?"
Oh, okay.
And much like my friend Brandon, I'm like, "Okay, just sure." And then I become obsessed and I take over the podcast. I'm currently on my 3rd co-host now. But that was basically the onus of the podcast, was that we would just basically, he would run a session
Mm-hmm.
and then we would debrief, and I would say, "This is what you did. I thought was good. This is some things I think you could improve on. Here's some suggestions for you." So if you go back and listen to our very early episodes, that's exactly what it was. It was me and Evan talking through his thought process.
Right.
And then we ended up kind of exploring into the actual play space. I started to run a game, and Evan's like, "No one's going to listen to us play." Surprise, surprise. Actually, that's kind of what got our show popular. Our first actual play was very popular.
Mm-hmm.
In the nowhere near Critical Role, obviously, that's like
Yeah.
ridiculous, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of grew from there. After about a year, roughly, Evan's like, "You know what? I don't really have time for the podcasting anymore." He's getting married. He had a kid. He's since then moved. So he decided to step away from the podcast, but I was like committed. Like, I loved podcasting. I
Yeah.
loved everything about it. I loved the community that was starting to form around our show. And so I said, "Okay, I want to keep going with it." And again, I'm now sort of on my 4th co-host because I become obsessed
Yeah.
and I'm really passionate about it. That's the only reason why it's still going after 14 years, 13, 14. And so I've said, as long as it's fun, I'm going to keep doing it, and it's still fun.
Right. So, but you do have a set co-host, but you also have a bunch of people joining in with you, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean,
Yeah, so we basically call it faculty, because we really leaned in hard to the academy,
mm-hmm.
Theme of our show. So a lot of our show types, we have a detention show, which is every other week live Twitch show, which gets put on YouTube and audio only, which is more of a loose format, kind of silly. We do some improv games, but we talk about role playing games a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We have faculty meetings, which is where we do like GM theory advice, like how to do this, how to do that. We have show and tell, which is where we interview designers about games, usually Kickstarter related, just because that's the way the world works right now. We have a film class. So this is one we only do occasionally, but we'll like take a movie and review it. And like, how would we do this movie? What game system would be good to do this type of movie? Like, maybe there's a particular scene, like a chasing, like how could we emulate this in a RPG type of a thing? And then we have a few that don't quite work perfectly in that, but we still try to put them in there a little bit. So for each of those, I have different co-hosts that come on. We have guest co-hosts. But at the moment, Chris Burlew was probably my official co-host,
Mm-hmm.
and he's with me every other week on Detention.
Nice.
That's probably the thing that we do most regularly. We have review shows and stuff that are kind of like as they happen sort of a thing.
So one of the things that I've noticed in listening to your podcast and looking at some of the other offerings that you do, and I'll give you accolades for this, but as and I'm not saying everyone does this, but one of the things that it seems like that the RPG Academy steers clear from is a lot of the controversy and drama that exists in the hobby. And you're on Twitter, so you've witnessed it, whether you engage or not. But and most of this is just little nonsense. But is that like a conscious choice that you kind of like, you just want to keep this away? You're just focusing strictly on games and don't even want to dip your toe in the water of any of that? I mean, when the OGL thing happened, did you guys even discuss that at all, or just kind of
We
just
do
left that?
we try to steer clear a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say, like, we're kind of like Switzerland, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't always necessarily good, but our goal has always been, we're there to be ambassadors to the hobby. And that means people are welcome, all walks of life. And so we want everyone to feel comfortable. Now you get into the paradox of being welcoming actually makes you unwelcome, because if you let like neo-Nazis in, then that can ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, screw those guys. I don't want those people at my
Right.
table.
Exactly.
Uh, but if you're a diehard Republican and I'm like as left leaning as you can get, we can still game together as long
Mhm.
as we're dealing with fantasy stuff. We're dealing with sci-fi stuff, whatever it is. As long as you keep your stuff off the table, I'll keep my stuff off the table.
Yeah.
And we can play together, and and we can still be friends. So we do kind of try to avoid, because I do think a lot of it's just nonsense. Like it's just literally
Yes.
people trying to start an argument. Maybe they're trying to get clout. They're trying to like start an argument to get engagement. So sometimes I think it's just nonsense. There's like three people on the internet screaming at each other. So
Mhm.
we don't really get involved on that a whole lot. And I like to think that if people actually listen to my show, they're going to figure out pretty quickly the way that I lean and the type of person I am. I
Mhm.
don't feel the need to like shout it from the rooftops.
Right. Right. No, accolades to that. I mean, I may get into my own little bit on the socials, but tend to avoid it on both the podcast and most definitely here. I think the only controversial thing I've done on here is just when my son and his friend read the changes that they were presenting before the OGL thing occurred for the next edition of D&D, whatever it's called. They had a few things to say, so I just kind of gave them a platform, and they're
Mm,
teenagers, so they're
yeah.
you know they broke this, they broke that. Why are they doing this? Why are they changing that? It was, and just kind of give them a bit of opportunity to air their laundry a bit, but also to show that that the next generation of gamers, they're still viable, and these are the ones that are going to make the decisions in the coming years. And I do feel a lot of times in the hobby that they tend to forget that. They focus on their primary market, which it's business, and that's how it's going to be. But they don't really think past that.
Mhm.
So, and those people they're currently focusing on are going to get older like us, and they're going to get grumpy and whatnot, and they'll be on their high horse
Yeah.
saying, fifth edition was the best thing ever. I can't believe you're playing seventh E. That
Yeah.
stuff is just junk. Yeah, that's
That's silly. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm the old man yelling at clouds.
right.
There's a new generation of old men and new clouds to yell at.
So, but so as I'm going through some of the things that you've done, on here, you do obviously, especially with in the actual plays and the reviews, there's really no you look at and focus on everything, a little bit of everything here. From independent games to the top ones as far as
Sure.
D&D, and other aspects. I haven't gone through them all. You've got over 300 episodes, I believe, but
No, we have over 1,000.
over 1,000. Okay, so that's
Yeah,
just what's
because
showing
see,
on.
right, you can only 300 is the maximum you can see on iTunes.
Okay,
So
that's
we have over 1,000 episodes. So if you want to listen to all of them, you got to go to the website. But we also set up a different, like we have different feeds. So there's a feed for faculty, there's a feed for this and feed for that. That'll help subdivide them.
yeah.
But the primary thing we do right now, actual play wise, is we have two shows. One's called The Trials,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is called The Sample Adventures. And they're both basically the same thing, except The Trials is where we try out a new game we've never played before, and we
Mm-hmm.
get the designer to run it for us. So it's like a
Yeah.
one shot of a new game. And The Sample Adventures is the same thing, except we don't always manage to get the designer to run it. So one of us runs it, and
Mm-hmm.
those are streamed,
Mm-hmm.
but then they become audio only also.
Right.
So we right now, um, we have one long-term campaign that Chris is running. It's
Mm-hmm.
a Dragonlance. He's running the new
Yes.
Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen book.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of our actual plays are one shots of various systems, various players, various GMs.
Uh, how you liking the new Dragonlance? I don't know if you touched upon that back in the day and whatnot. I mean, it's
I was never a huge fan. Like again,
Mhm.
it's weird because I played D&D so long, but I've also been so secular or
Yeah.
insular, I guess.
Mhm.
Secular's not the right insular because I didn't have a big group I interacted with.
Mhm.
So I never read the Dragonlance
Okay.
novels. I never played any of the modules. I just made up my own stuff always.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I'm like, I'm a giant D&D nerd. I need to read these books. So I read the first Autumn, Twilight, whatever those first three
Mhm.
Dragonlance books. They were okay.
Yeah.
I didn't love them. I certainly didn't hate them. I've read worse books, but it was not something like, oh, this is amazing. Like I don't have that nostalgia for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any of that baggage coming in. And my, we did end up reviewing the book.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, actually, who is a big Dragonlance fan, he reviewed it instead of me,
Okay.
with Tom, and he was pretty high on it. He said that he saw the changes. He can understand why they made them,
Mm-hmm.
but he was overall pretty positive on it. I had no history
Okay.
of it, but he's actually running the campaign. It's coming out as an actual play, and our goal is once he's done,
Hmm.
we're going to get it and we're going to do like a recap. Like, okay, now that you played through it, now what are your
What are your
thoughts?
thoughts?
Blah blah
Yeah.
blah, and we'll see how that goes. I think they're on episode 8, and it's probably going to be somewhere around 20 to 30 before he's done.
Yeah, it's fairly in depth. It's a big one.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's I mean, the Dragonlance books. I don't blame you. I mean, they're written for teenagers, and and as amazing as it seemed when I read them when I was 13, 14 years old, I did venture back to them later in life and kind of went, oh no, this is best remembered from the nostalgia point of view. I mean,
Yep.
again, not horrible, but this definitely is not high literature. And that tends to be the course for most of the D&D books that have come out over the years. There,
Mhm.
you just like anything else, just like going into a movie that you may have heard bad things about. Go into any D&D book with no expectations, and you should you'll come away with at least some sort of a good time. But
Yeah.
yeah, that but so excellent. So you're doing the podcast, right? And how many years have you done it now? You said
It's 13 to 14, somewhere in there. I kind of lost track, but I
okay.
think it's at least 13. I don't think we're quite at 14.
Okay. So you're doing the podcast and it starts to branch out and garner success. And I've heard other podcasts where you've come in and done interviews such as this and whatnot to just talk about the podcast and whatnot. And it expands out, but then at a certain point in time, it looks like you start branching out into other things, things such as Acadecon. Got it right.
Mhm.
So I think everyone who does a podcast at some point has some sort of uh, either minor or major ambition. Going, well, geez, let's do something. Let's do a little con, whether it be a little mini con online, or maybe see if we can actually do something at a local game store. But I don't know, or meet up at a location with a bunch
Mhm.
of friends. But this and we'll go into detail on the Kickstarter. But this looks like this is a 3-day convention that's not unlike the regular conventions that most of us attend, Strategicon or GaryCon, or not the size of it, but all the conventions
No.
that have been around for years.
Right.
Yeah. So again, how did this fall into your lap?
Yeah. So, as I said, I played D&D for years and years, but I've always been insular,
Mhm.
contained. And I've said this before, like as a professional, like, in my 30s,
Mhm.
I was at a professional job, had a professional career. If I was playing D&D and like someone at work had like maybe overheard something, like people were coming over and were to ask me, "Hey, I heard, who's coming over? What's going on?" I would lie and
Yeah.
say, "Oh, we're going to play poker." Or they're going to come over and play video games. Like I would not tell people at work because I was afraid that it would affect my career. I'm like, I'm some D&D nerd. They're not going to promote me to, general manager or whatever.
Right.
But once the podcast started, I think it was our second year of the podcast, we decided to go to Gen Con for the podcast.
Okay.
Again, I'd never been to any convention before,
Oh
much less
wow.
Gen Con, but literally never had been to a convention of any type. So I had no idea what I was in for, but I lived in Cincinnati at the time. It's
Mhm.
like a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of friends in the podcast and faculty and everything. So we made this big thing to go. And it truly changed my life. Like
Mm.
I had so much fun at that first Gen Con that I walked away. Now I'm an evangelist. Like I tell everybody I play D&D. I won't shut up about D&D because I was suddenly surrounded by 40, 50,000 other nerds
Mhm.
who love this stuff as much as I do, who are loud and proud about it. Again, and not to minimize it, but it was kind of like coming out of the closet in a way. Like I'm with my people and everyone's okay with it.
Mhm.
And I came home like, not only was that I'm going to start telling everybody I play D&D, but I said, that was too much fun. I cannot wait
Wait.
a year to do that again. Now, a smart person would have went to Google and found out that there's like 4,000 local conventions. I am not a smart man. So I decided we're going to do our own. So we decided to do the first Acadecon. And again, it's a terrible name. I
Yeah.
understand that, but I love it. So we're going to stick with it. But it's basically RPG Academy Convention squished together to Acadecon.
Got it.
And so we basically set up like a weekend thing. And I think there's like maybe 10, 11 of us. Basically it's just the faculty. It was a glorified gaming weekend with all the people who were part of the
Right.
podcast already, right? And it was so much fun. But then we actually got snowed out. It's supposed to be a 3-day. It turned into a 2-day because we got snowed out, and like
Mhm.
everyone had to go home early because they were afraid. Literally, we got like a 2-foot snowstorm. So then I'm like, okay, that was great, but we're not going to wait a year to do that again. So our first 2 Acadecons were actually in the same year, and it was the second one that we decided to like open it up. Like we had no idea who would. If I would, we just got on the podcast, and by this point, Caleb was my co-host, and I
Right.
said, "We're going to do this game at my house. Anybody wants to show up, just let me know. Don't just surprise me, but let me know." And it's an open invite to my house.
Mhm.
Holy crap, people showed up. I had people from Arizona drove to my house at
Oh,
this time,
wow.
Southeast, or no, this was Cincinnati. And we spent the weekend down in my basement playing games. And it was incredibly fun. I
Mhm.
think we had like maybe 20 people total. We had a local game designer I found online. He came up and like showed off his game.
Yeah.
And it was still very like intimate and, glorified gamers weekend.
Mhm.
But it was Eric who said, because again, I had strangers coming. I had no idea who these people were. It could have been axe murderers. So my wife and kids, I booted them out to a hotel. It's like, I don't want you sleeping in the same house with these. I don't know these people, right?
Right.
So it was Eric who said, why don't you just like everybody throw in like $50 and just rent out like a ballroom at a hotel. And
Mhm.
that way, you don't have to kick your wife out. We'll get rooms at the hotel. We'll just do like a little thing. And me, being Michael, turn that into, okay, we're going to run a Kickstarter and we're going to raise some money. And Caleb was right there. I blame him as much as me. He's like, yeah, this is a great idea. So next thing you know, we ran a Kickstarter. We raised over $4,000. We rented out a small convention center in the middle of the woods. It's like the creepiest place on the planet. But it was so much fun. We brought in Rob Schwab came that first
Oh,
year.
nice.
John Wick came in
Oh,
that year, not the
wow.
assassin, the guy who makes games,
Yeah.
and Rich Baker. I got those 3 guys, convinced them to come in this creepy ass lodge in the middle of the woods, and it was so much fun, but it was already too big. We had 140 people came that first year,
Mhm.
and we were already bursting at the seams. So we're like, okay, we're going to do this again, but we've got to find a place that's bigger. And that's how we ended up at Dayton. Dayton is like, I have no true connection. Dayton was like the next town over from me,
Right.
but it had the right price to size ratio.
Yeah.
It's big enough that we can continue to grow. So we've been there ever since. This year will be our 7th year at that location.
That's fantastic. I mean, my God, just, I can imagine like a lot of people's first con. Yeah, we got the guy who knows the guy who cleans Rob Schwab's house. That's attending, but you got all 3 of those. Yeah. That,
Yeah,
that,
basically the podcast is what did that because I had all 3 of them on the show at various times, interviewing them, helping promote things they were working on. And by no means we're not friends. I don't know if
yeah.
they could pick me out of a lineup, but we had friendly conversations.
Yes.
And when I brought up the idea that I was doing this, they were like, free weekend hanging out at a lodge playing games, sure, So it became an easy sell because I already had the in.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing what, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I've been doing the podcast for a couple of years now, and it is amazing how accessible so many of these people are. And, back in the day, they were just names on the cover of a book. And mind you, some of them were legends, but you wouldn't even think of like, oh
Mhm.
my God, can we, other than maybe seeing them at the con and, thinking them, can I get a signature and talk briefly on something? You wouldn't think that you would be able to sit down and have an hour, 2 hour conversation with some of these people, let alone, hey, do you want to come to this fledgling con that we're doing? And you realize that, oh wait, they're as wonderful as they are, as talented they are, they're just everyday normal people
They're
who
just
just
people.
just want to come out and have fun too.
Yep.
Yeah, and definitely the podcast. Yes, it'd be different if you were just some guy saying, hey, you want to come in my basement and play games this
Right.
weekend?
Yeah, that would have been a little bit different. I know how lucky we were
Yeah.
that we, the height of our popularity, because our
Mhm.
show is definitely on the lower end now than where it was.
Mhm.
We basically leveraged it perfectly to get some of those people to show up, and that definitely added some legitimacy to our convention. We also, because we have the podcast, we have a really good rapport with a lot of podcasters,
Mhm.
some of which have much bigger shows than ours. And so sometimes we can get those people to come and hang out. So we have, famous podcasters.
Mhm.
The One Shot Crew has been there a couple of times. DM's Block comes most of the time.
Mhm.
Again, both of those shows are way bigger than my show. And so they have an audience that they come for them. And
Mhm.
so it's a lot of luck, but it's also been a lot of work. I mean, it truly is. So what I will say here is if you go to a local convention, make sure you let those people know you appreciate them.
Oh,
Even if it was only an okay time, they worked harder on that okay time than you will ever imagine,
Mhm.
and it goes a very long way. There were a couple years in a row, dead serious, where I went to a Acadecon thinking, "This is the last year, I'm never doing this again."
Mhm.
And then before the weekend was over, so many people had come up and said, "Thank you for doing this. This is like my favorite, this is my vacation. I plan for this every year. I can't wait to
Mhm.
come back." And they're already excited. So then I'm like, "Okay, I guess we're doing it again."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so much work, but it is so much fun too.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. And again, for those of you who, who attend conventions, you probably already realize this. If you're going to your first convention, these people work hard, and you probably only witness 10% of what they're doing.
Oh yeah,
It's
if that.
amazing. And while we're at it, I don't know if you may have vendors at your convention, but
We do.
my good friend, he's a vendor. Strategicon is really the only
Okay.
May convention out here in LA 3 times a year, but he's a vendor, and he 8, 9, 10 hours standing behind that booth, and I've helped him out many a time. So acknowledge them. If they say
Mhm.
if they say hello, just say hi back. It doesn't
Say
cost
hi
you
back, yeah.
anything. Yeah. But no, so which will then bring us now where we're looking at, we've got the Acadecon Kickstarter, which is currently up and running. And one of the things that I'm just going to read a little bit off of here, but with in regards to the motto of your podcast, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. And I
Yep.
think there's no arguing with that. There was a little snippet on I think it was Bluesky or Twitter. Someone asked, "What's the least controversial take?" Not the most controversial take, because we're
Yeah.
tired of those. What's the least controversial take on that you have about the hobby? And I think this one is definitely one of them, because there's no arguing that. If you're having fun, you're doing it right. Doesn't Everything else just falls
Yeah.
to the wayside?
I've
But
had a few people just like if they're trying to be not jerks, but just like kind of push
yes,
pins. Sometimes they'll say, "Well, define fun." Like what's fun for you may not be fun for me. And I'm like, well, but that's why the motto works because you're the one saying it. If
right,
you had fun, you being everyone at the table, because if three people had fun and one person hated it, that's not cool.
yeah,
But if everyone at the table had fun, then you absolutely did the right thing. And sort of the expanded motto, if you
mhm,
don't mind, is
yes,
so no matter what game you play, the system or edition, what rules you use, don't use or misuse. As long as you and everyone at your table had a good time, you did it right.
yeah.
So that's something we say every podcast.
Oh, agree 100%. And I think what a lot of people, and usually it's those who tend to be a little abrupt about stuff like that, is
Contrarian, like they're just
contrarian.
trying. Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing they don't realize is, and this is fair thing to say, every game doesn't have to be for you. Every game is not for everyone. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
you'll find, if you don't like what you're playing now, I guarantee you'll eventually find something that you will, because there's no end to the games out there. And just because you didn't like this particular one and these people do like it, doesn't mean they're wrong. Just
Right.
let them do their thing, and you can go find your thing. It's
Yeah,
it's no
that's
big
the thing
deal.
that drives me bananas.
Yeah.
Is I use it as the Coke Pepsi analogy
Hmm.
that like, hey, I like Coke. You like Pepsi? Cool. But other people are like, oh, you like Coke, I like Pepsi. You're wrong. You should drink Pepsi because Coke is bad. No, just you enjoy Coke. I enjoy Pepsi. Like what? Yeah. That's the thing that gets me again. Just because it's not the way you think it should be doesn't mean we're wrong. I'm
Oh,
not saying I'm right, but I'm not wrong either.
I will add a little bit to that. Did you ever take the Pepsi challenge back in the day?
Um, no, I don't think I did, but
I
I'm also a very weird person. I enjoy Coke at restaurants and Pepsis at home.
well,
I drink both.
I did, and I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into why
Sure.
most people enjoy Pepsi, because I took it back in the day when I was younger as a kid, and it was at some sort of event that my parents took me to. And here's how it works. Here's a cup of ice cold Pepsi. Just, it's a hot day. I think we were at like a hydrofoil boat race. It
Okay.
might have been out on the Ohio or something. I'm from Indiana. I
Oh,
grew up in California, but born in Indiana. And have
okay.
family in Kentucky. But anyway, so it's hot, humid day, as it would be, and just someone can give you an ice cold cup of oil and it would still be fine.
Right, right.
And then they go, okay, try the Coke. Flat, hot, watered down, and of course you're gonna go, wow, this Pepsi is amazing. So again, if in regards to that, if someone says they don't enjoy something, find out for yourself, because maybe their impression of it may be a bit skewed, because
Mhm.
it's definitely something that, different strokes for different folks.
Right,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Find what you love, but don't if someone else loves something you don't, just go, "Cool," and move on.
So tell me about the current Acadecon Kickstarter. You are I've got it up here. We have 15 days to go.
Yep.
And now this is something that some people, may not be aware of, is most people are used to games, books, and whatnot being run through Kickstarter, but likewise, events are utilized for that. So now other people, as far as conventions, I'm not aware of any others that may do a Kickstarter for this.
There are several
There are.
of our size. Like,
Okay.
Gen Con's never gonna do that, Origin's not gonna do it,
No.
but, like, the small regional cons in our size group, it's actually a pretty common practice, which is what we just stole from someone else. It wasn't my idea, and I'm like, "Okay, they did it, I'll do it." So, basically, the way it works is, again, we have no money. Like, don't get me wrong,
Right.
we're all volunteers.
Yes.
Last year, we actually made money for the first time in, like, 5 years. So, this is not like a money-making enterprise. If we
Right.
break even, we're all high-fiving each other, and again, that's no one gets paid if we break even, we're all high-fiving each other.
Yes.
So we don't have any money to like put down deposits because the DCC is like $8,000 a year alone
Hmm.
just for that.
Right.
So the Kickstarter allows us to make sure we have at least enough money to pay those deposits, to pay some of the other expenses. We have to buy insurance. If you didn't know that, if you run a DCC, you still have to get insurance too for your event. So that's extra third party,
Hmm.
and all the other stuff that we do. We buy prizes that we give away. We get T-shirts for all the volunteers. We get dice for everybody who shows up. There's all kinds of these expenses that you probably don't realize they're part of
Yeah.
it. Anyway, so the Kickstarter lets us at least know that we can cover the deposits.
Hmm.
And then after the Kickstarter, people can buy badges at the door through, tabletop events. I think even Origins used them this year, which is the biggest con I know of that uses them. It's a very popular, very well-maintained website. It lets us do all the registration, event submission kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But anyway, so the Kickstarter just lets us to make sure we have at least enough support to pay the deposits and not have to put it on our credit cards and just, pray.
Right.
So we've been doing it every year. We actually hope that there's a year, and it's probably not far away, that we don't need to do that. Like we will have enough returning people that we can just go to tabletop and be good.
Hmm.
But there is still this sort of push and pull of sometimes people find us that way. Sometimes people will throw a couple extra bucks just to like help us get to the next level. So you actually end up getting like donations through Kickstarter that you wouldn't get if you just went to tabletop. But then Kickstarter also takes their own like small cut. So every year we evaluate whether we need to go back again. But all that said, yes, we have a Kickstarter. It's just to make sure we have enough for our deposits. If people want to show up, they do not have to go through the Kickstarter. They can buy badges later, including
Okay.
physically at the door if they want, because we funded. If we didn't fund, that'd be different. But we have exceeded our goal. It runs for another 15 days. It ends on the 20th of September.
Hmm.
Our actual event is November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So if you
Right.
actually want to come hang out with us, that's what you need to be in Dayton, Ohio, November 3rd, 4th, and 5th at the Dayton Convention Center. But the Kickstarter, if you get a full badge, it's a little bit cheaper than at the door. If you buy a T-shirt, it's cheaper through the Kickstarter than if you buy it at the door. Our demo tables and vendors are already sold out, but those are available.
Right.
We have a GM badge, so if you want to run a couple events for us, you get a half price badge for coming.
Okay.
And that is one of the things that we try to do, is because we're not big enough. I can't give you a badge and give you a hotel like Gen Con or Origins can.
Right.
But if you run a couple events, I'll give you I'll give you half off your badge. But I don't want anyone to come to our convention just to run games. I want you to come to play games. I want you to have time to hang out and do things. So that's kind of why we incentivize it the way we do, is that you have to run two things, but we don't care what those two things are. You put on two things and you're good.
Mhm.
Because again, I love Gen Con, but I go to Gen Con and someone's like, "Oh, this is my fifth game I've ran. Every game has 8 people.
Yeah.
Each game is 4 hours long." I'm like, other than sleep, how are you enjoying? I don't want to get to the part where you run games to get to go. I
Yeah.
want you to go to have fun, and you just run games because you like it. And again, I know I'm rambling, but again, that's me.
Yeah.
But we have people who pay for VIP badges.
Mm-hmm.
It's $90. It's twice as expensive as a regular badge.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, it's not worth it. But we have people that do it, and then they run games. Like, there are people who would qualify for a GM badge, but they want to support us. They want the little knickknacks that they get for being a VIP.
Mm-hmm.
But we are so blessed that there are people who come to our convention that they just love a game and they want to share it with you.
Yes.
So they run it. They don't run it because they get a cheaper badge. They don't run it so they get a free hotel. They ran the game because they love this game and they want you to love it as much as they do.
Right. So, so just a couple questions about that. This is more personally, just logistics about the con. So, as far as running games, is there a set schedule throughout the course of the con for each day? Does it run 24 hours like some cons do? Like for example, if I wanted to run a particular game at the con, is it 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m. kind of thing, or is the time schedule just kind of fluid? How does that work out if you're attending the con?
So yes and no.
Okay.
So we ask that for general purposes, you try to schedule on the 9 to 1, 2 to 6, 7 to 11 schedule.
Okay.
So 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Our convention closes at 11:30 each night because it is ridiculously expensive to pay for overnight security.
Oh, wow.
And the first couple of years we did that. We were 24 hours and we had like 3 people that would stay till 3 a.m. and run games, and it just was not worth it. Right. So now we kick everyone out at 11:30. But you don't have to do that. Like when you submit events, we have complete open submission policy. If you want to run whatever game you want to run, I'll put it on the schedule. Can't guarantee anybody's going to show up and play it. But if you want to run it, we'll put it on the schedule and see who shows up. But if you don't want to do that, if you have like a 5-hour game, or if you just like, I have an 8-hour huge thing I want to do, put it on the schedule. People show up, great. But we generally ask that you try to do that. That way people can schedule breaks. We have like our raffle prizes that we give away. We try to schedule those in between games. The food at the convention center, not great. And we're not allowed to bring in food because they want you to buy their food. So we want to give people time to walk across the street, order a pizza, whatever the case may be. But for the most part, I'm never going to say don't schedule it off hours, but we try to keep most of them in those hours.
Okay. I can imagine most people I know who have done, mini cons or virtual cons, scheduling the games and slotting them is one of the most difficult aspects of it, of trying to even it out, because there's nothing worse than having a heavy-handed portion of a con, and there are few people are just like, why is no one at my game, and stuff like that, or just making it match, or like you said, I've been here 16 hours and I haven't moved. I've just gone to the bathroom and I'm starving to death, but this is what I've committed to. And I mean, have you ever had to tell someone like, hey, maybe you might be better off doing this time slot or doing that time slot and stuff like that?
On occasion, as I tell people, like if you get the earlier you submit, you're much more likely to get your first choice. Like the way the system works, you have to put in an alternate time. Like the system won't let you submit. You have to have A and B choices. And I'd say 90% of the time, maybe even 95%, I just approve based on what you submitted. But I will look at things because I do all that manually just because we're small enough, I can still do that. So I will look and go, oh, we've already got 12 games this time, this day. I don't think we have enough players. So I might, whoever came in last, I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to make you move it, but you may not get anybody because we have so many people. Would you consider moving to this time or this day in this kind of situation? And we had one guy last year, like we've never had a lot of Magic the Gathering. It's just not something that we've had a lot of. I know in a lot of conventions, it's a huge thing. So I was very excited that someone's like, hey, I want to run like a learn to play Commander, which is a certain specific type of Magic the Gathering. I'm like, oh, fantastic. I'd love to have some of those. And they put like 15, they're doing like every 2 hours, open to close Friday, Saturday. I'm like, dude, you are not going to get enough people to justify that. So why don't you pick like half of those and go play some things? And they still end up putting in more than I thought. And like half of them didn't fire because they didn't have enough people. So he's coming back. I'm like, great, I want you to come back, but just do a couple. Two's all I want, and then go play some games,
Oh, any thoughts about adding a virtual aspect to it?
So we did, for COVID, the year we ended up canceling one year. So we did do an online portion that let us kind of keep things going and, allowed us raise up a little money and help offset some expenses and that kind of thing. I don't think we're big enough yet. Like I feel like I still want our in-person event to be the premier thing that people are there for.
Right.
And right now the online would be the also ran sort of situation, but there might get to a point where honestly, if we get to the point where we start making money and I can start paying people, then I would love to say, okay, you're my online person. What can we do? But right now, it's so hard to manage as it is.
Yeah.
I don't, when you're asking people to do stuff for free, it's kind of hard to be too demanding.
Hmm.
So we get to the point where I can start paying people. Absolutely, I would like to do something like that. We've even talked to, well, there were a couple years where we did like a 6 month thing where we did like a small online. It didn't work out. It was a lot of work.
Hmm.
Didn't really get enough interest to make it worthwhile. But yeah, if we keep growing, there's a point where yes, I would look at that again. Not opposed to it, but just not ready for it.
That's fair enough. I get it, because running an online convention is just as difficult and demanding as it can be in person. Just, you're just moving different pieces on the chessboard, but it has its pluses and minuses
Oh yeah.
also.
Mhm.
So with that, you've already passed your where are we at? Sorry, I got to scroll up here.
Yeah,
Uh,
our goal was 12.5, and
yes,
we're at 14.2, I think, right now.
14,251, 213 backers. So aside from those backers, what are you looking at as far as for people who are just going to show up? As far as how many, what's the
So
population going to be for the con?
we're hoping to hit 600
Oh,
attendees
wow.
this year, and because some of those backers are just sponsors, people who just donate
Right.
money. Some of them, like we have a party pack, so you can get 5 badges for the cost of 4. So some of those backers are actually 5 people in terms of people showing up.
Hmm.
But last year we got right around 515 total unique, and we're hoping that this year we'll get to about 600. We had a last year was an amazing year for us. Like COVID killed us the first year after COVID. We were down to like 300 people. It was rough. We definitely did not make money that year. And so we kind of been trying to rebuild. And last year was fantastic. We had so many people who had never heard of us before, even though they were local,
Hmm.
which is, again, still drives me bananas because I've been in Dayton. This is our 7th year, and I'll have someone every year go, I didn't know we even had our own convention. Like, I wish I could fix that because I want you to be here. But we're coming off a good year. We've actually got some news coverage already. I've got another thing in the paper going to come out. So I'm really hopeful that we can get to about 600 people this year. And about 750 people is when I think we'll start making a profit, and we can actually like start paying people. So we're close.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to definitely pass. I've got a couple friends that I game with on pretty much a weekend basis. Most of which Josh Burnett. He lives in Toledo. He's an
Mhm.
author. He does a lot of DCC games and other games of his own. And he sounds like one of those that may not even know that there's a con in his neck of the woods that he can attend. But yeah, passing the word along to them, because when like I wasn't aware of Strategicon out in LA until several years ago. I've heard of it, but it used to be out in Anaheim, down by
Mm.
Disneyland. I moved to Los Angeles near the airport many years ago, and I had my own downtime personally when it regards to games. But it was one of those things where it's like you are kind of situated in the wonderful valley of cons, where you can throw a rock in any direction, then there tends to be a convention going on somewhere within relative driving distance. I mean, whereas in California you've got Strategicon 3 times a year, and other than that it's a 8-hour drive up north or cross country drive to go find something. But still, I'm just as you. I'm still shocked and surprised that there are people there who it's like, oh wow, there's a convention just nearby, and I don't have to, I like you. It's like I don't have to wait for Gen Con every year. I can
Yep.
just go check this out. Yeah, so definitely going to pass the word around that. And again, for the people watching, you may ask, this convention's not near me, but as you stated, people come from all over the place to this convention, and
I like to say we're an international destination. Johann has come from Switzerland
he
twice to
he
come.
he does. Oh my God,
Yeah.
yeah,
He did
Johan.
not come last year. I don't know if he's coming this year or not, but he's a friend of a friend. They play online together, and he literally flew from Switzerland 2 years in a row. So I get to say that we're an international destination.
And he's fantastic. I'll gloat about him just briefly for a second here. We attended our first Gen Con 2 years ago with my son, who's a big gamer, and he's a giant Mork Borg fan.
Mm.
And he walked by the table a few times because he wanted Johan to sign his book.
Oh, well, hold on. My
Yeah.
Johann is probably not your
Oh, I'm
Johann.
sorry.
This is
Okay,
just some,
Johan,
yeah,
different
no,
Johan.
this is just some dude I know named Johann who
Oh,
lives
okay.
in
I thought you were
Switzerland.
talking about Johan Noah from Mork Borg. No
No, no,
problem. So
I
yeah,
don't think that's him.
yeah. So we'll strike that. Yeah. Wears a punk rock jean vest. No, okay, probably different one. Yeah,
Nope.
no worries.
Different Johann.
Okay, so
from
sorry.
Switzerland. Yeah.
I'm used to people. I'm in the circles where when someone mentions Johann, they're talking about him.
Oh,
But
okay.
still, international destination nonetheless. And I'm sure
Yeah.
that Johann is just as wonderful as he is. So we'll strike that from
Okay.
the record. But anyways, and this is something that I tend to believe in is even if you're not attending this convention, you do have an option to just maybe give a couple bucks here, because the way I look at it is in regards to little conventions like that. Every little bit helps, and it's going to what is going to continue to keep these type of things rolling. And I'm a firm believer in karma. So if you're in an area where there may not be a convention, but even if it's just here just to support a positive aspect of the hobby, just give a little dollar to these little things. I mean, I hate to sound like an old commercial from the 80s, but that's less than a cup of coffee.
Right.
But what it is, it means so much more to the people that you're giving it to. And it does show that there's a vested interest in not just the convention itself, but again, like I said, maintaining a positive aspect of the hobby. So it's for those, again, for those watching, check out the Kickstarter. I mean, if it's in your neck of the woods, obviously you look into it. If you're not aware of it, please, check it out. And but if it's something that you're not going to attend, but you feel like supporting this, again, check out the Kickstarter and maybe give a dollar or two to help support it. So
I am not above begging.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely not.
No.
My desire is that people will come play games with me. Like
Right.
that's obviously number one. That's what we want.
Mhm.
But if you can't and you do want to support the show, there's two main avenues that I would want to direct people to.
Yep.
One is our game library. So
Okay.
we have a game library, basically board games, card games.
Mhm.
So if there's a game that you love, you can give us enough money and I'll go buy that game. So you can
Oh, wow.
donate, $38 and say, hey, if you go to Amazon or your friendly local game store, this is the game I want you to buy. It's my favorite game. And we have a link. You can see all the games that are in our library.
Oh,
So if
fantastic.
we don't already have a copy, or if you think we need 2 copies, donate what I need and I will go buy that game to add it to the library.
Mhm.
And then this year, one of the big changes we're doing is we have something we call our Junior Academy track.
Okay.
And we're trying to get more kid-friendly programming,
Mhm.
because that's not something we have had a lot of.
Yeah.
So we have some volunteers, like my kids. I have a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old. They're going to come and they're actually going to run events this year.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to get specifically, so we have a Junior Academy donation where you can money that will go strictly to either getting games for them, maybe getting prizes for them. Like we're still figuring out where all the money's going to go, but it will
Yes.
go specifically towards either getting kids to run games or getting people to run games that are aimed at kids.
I support that 100%. I'm a big proponent of, getting kids into gaming, because again, they're the only ones that are going to torch is going to be passed to them. They're the ones that's going to keep the hobby rolling.
Right.
I've run an intro to D&D at the community center, and that's one of the things that I tend to focus on, whether it be, occasionally on my channel. I've done other interviews specifically pointing out, kids in gaming, and and just the similarities, but also the differences between how we were and how they are. But realistically, it's almost identical in so many different ways. But yes, one of the big humps is, of course, the group of 12, 13, 16, 17-year-olds sitting around that table going, I don't want a GM. And just having something to give them that bit of confidence to say, well, either I'll do it, or as you stated earlier, help someone else get into the game, because that's another wonderful aspect. Co-GMing is a fantastic way to get into the game, because you when you're younger, you feel more confident with your friends, as far as I'm
Right.
concerned, and it's a lot easier to do these things in tandem than just to stand solo in front of a bunch of wide eyes going, okay, dance monkey, impress me.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. I love that. And again, that right there is worth a donation on its own, just to that's to continue to spread the hobby to the younger generation here. So before we conclude, anything else you would like to add in regards to the Kickstarter of the con that I may not have touched upon?
I think you did a fabulous job. The only thing I would just want to touch base again on is that I created the convention that I wanted to go to. Like that's kind of what Acadecon. It started in my basement,
Yeah.
and we mentioned on the Kickstarter page, if you read it, like no matter how big we get, which I mean, if we get more than 2,000 people, my hair will fall out because I can't handle that much stress. But 750 would be a good number.
Yeah.
But no matter how big it gets, we want it to always feel like you're just playing with your friends.
Right.
Like that. We always want it to feel like that. So a couple of things that we do is, one, there's no charge for events. Like once you have a badge, all the events are free. So you don't pay the $2 per game or $4 game like you do at some other conventions. Not all of them, but a lot of them do
Some
that.
do, yeah.
And that's our motto as well for the convention, is gaming with friends, old and new. Because you're going to be playing with people who just love this game. That's why they're not running it to get the free badge. They're not running it to get the free hotel. They're running it because this is their favorite game, and they want you to love it too. And we are truly just, I use the word blessed, that we have so many people that are willing to give us their time as GMs, even though they paid for a badge. They may have paid for a VIP badge, and they're still going to run events for you. And that's the kind of convention I wanted to go to. We're very RPG focused. We have board games, of course.
Yes.
We're D&D, like we have D&D and Pathfinder. We have organized play for both. But the majority of our events are not D&D or Pathfinder. Like it's like around 70% of our games are other games.
Wow.
Dread, Cypher System, Savage Worlds, Forbidden Lands. We love Forbidden or Free League, all the Free League stuff.
Yes.
So we have all these other games that you get to experience that maybe you've never played before. Because again, I love D&D. It's my favorite game. But I never played at conventions. I want to play something I've never played before.
Yes.
So I actively seek out games I've never played before or don't get to play often. And that's the convention that I won't say created. It's a lot of people did the work, but I've sort of fostered this environment where you can try out new games with people who love them. Because that is my experience. The best way to experience a game is have someone who loves it teach it to you.
Oh yeah. The excitement is, catches on during that. It's
like serving it with cold with ice rather than flat and warm, right?
Exactly. So again, what days are the convention?
So it's November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and that is in Dayton, Ohio at the Dayton Convention Center. The Kickstarter ends on September 20th. So you got like roughly 2 weeks from day of recording. I don't know when this will air, but you got about 2 weeks left in September.
Excellent. Oh yeah, no, this will be airing fairly soon. And of course, like with all things, there'll be information and links within the description of the video. And so before I let you go, just a couple, maybe some silly little questions for you, if you wouldn't mind answering.
Sure.
So
I love silly questions.
So other than D&D, actually, let's reword this. What is your absolute favorite non-D&D game that you would pretty much drop whatever you could to go play and or run?
Dread.
Dread, really?
I love Dread. Are you familiar with Dread?
I am familiar with Dread, yes.
Okay. So it is my favorite convention game. I run a Scooby-Doo Dread game. I've run it for years at Gen Con, Origin, Sin City Con, Lexicon, my convention. It is absolutely one of my favorite things. This year, I actually retired it, and we are going to do a Star Wars Dread game. So you are going to be a bunch of Padawans who crash land on an old Sith planet, and you have to try to get away before you are corrupted by the Force.
Oh my!
Some of the blocks will actually have the Sith symbol on them, and you won't know until you pull it.
Oh,
if you pull one of those bricks, you get a point of corruption, and you do not put it back on the top of the tower. You have to keep it to the side.
Right.
And we're still play testing, but 3 or 4 points of corruption, you actually turn against the rest of the party.
And for those who aren't aware, just real brief, Dread is a game that its main mechanic, it uses a Jenga tower for resolution. And I'll put a link to that also for anyone who's interested in that.
So much fun.
Oh, it is
so much fun.
It is a blast.
Beyond that, superheroes is like my second, again, Marvel Face Rip was my second game. It's like my second favorite genre. So I love superhero games. I love trying all of them. I still play Marvel Face Rip on occasion. I got to try the new Marvel game, the new 616 game recently. I'm going to run it on our channel on the 11th. It's going to be on our sample adventures, so people can check that out if they want. But I like to tell people, in truth, my second favorite game is whatever I'm playing at the time.
Nice. Roll behind a screen or roll out in the open?
Behind the screen.
Okay.
I will absolutely lie to your face if I think it makes the game more fun.
So, and that'll bring us to our last question then. I think I already know the answer to this one. Fudging or no fudging?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But I almost never do it. But I will.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you will never know when I do it.
Yeah, fair enough. And it is one of those things where, when you see those, fudging, if you fudge your dice, you're worse than
You're
Hitler.
evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Again, it's me, it's like going to a magic show,
right.
right? If I'm good at doing the illusion, because I know that
Mhm.
that person doesn't actually transform matter, right? Like they don't actually have access to the fifth dimension. They're doing a
Right.
trick. But if they do it well and I'm entertained, I love magic. It's one of my favorite things in the
Mhm.
world. If you're terrible at it and I can see what you're doing, it's awful. To me, fudging is exactly the same. If you do it well, you didn't
Yeah.
even do it at all.
And again, those who say they've never done it, I kind of feel they're lying.
Probably lying. Probably.
Exactly.
But,
Uh,
but I've been on the other side. I've had people DMs fudge, and I could tell they were fudging, and it wasn't fun.
okay.
But I like to think that I'm good at it. So,
Right.
and I tell people again, it's not a secret. I tell people I play with, I might fudge. Like it's not some, but I guarantee, or I hold to my heart
Mhm.
that they'll never know when and if I actually do it. But I don't keep it a secret that I will if I need to.
Fair enough. It's everyone has their own style, and I don't disagree with any of them.
Yep.
Other than when it's obvious when someone's kind of like being a bit uptight about things, and it's like, oh, come on, you fudge. We all fudge every once in a while. Be
Every now
honest
and
with
then.
yourself. So Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
This has been a wonderful. I mean, I've done another interview with a friend of mine who was promoting this game, but thank you for being, my second guest, but first one for this month of September. We're going to try to get more people onto the channel to have very similar chats such as this. And this has been absolutely wonderful. So check out the RPG Academy, everyone. It is a wonderful podcast, and like I said, there's many different flavors to choose from. It's the Baskin Robbins of the RPG podcasting world. You can definitely find a flavor you like, and check out the Kickstarter for Acadecon. And again, if you're not aware of it and you live locally, definitely go to it, because I guarantee you, if I lived nearby, I would be going to that without question. But again, if you feel like just throwing a few shekels to just promote the game and promote the hobby, and support the wonderful things that are going on at the con. Definitely check that out too. Again, all links to this will be out in the description. And I think, Michael, where can they find you as far as on the socials?
So I'm still most active on Twitter, and I
Hmm.
hate that because I love Twitter. It was so important to me
Hmm.
growing. Like there's people that I have true friendships with that I only know because of Twitter,
Right.
but it is burning down as we speak.
Yeah.
So I also have Bluesky. It's the RPG Academy on both.
Hmm.
We also have Facebook, but Twitter's still the most active place. But I truly don't know how much longer I'm going to be there. So probably Bluesky would be the best place to go right now.
I get it. I'm enjoying Bluesky. Bluesky's been the one that seems to be the preferred one
It's
for all of the
basically
other ones.
Twitter.
Yeah.
It's basically Twitter again, and I like Twitter. So yeah.
And if they would just add a direct messaging to that, I think I would be 100% sold.
And
But
and threads. I want to be able to
yeah.
do 3 or 4 in a row without.
Oh yeah, exactly. So everyone, this has been yet yet another completely unprofessional interview. Thank you so much. Yeah, this have you watched anything on this channel yet? I don't know if
I
you
have
have.
not yet.
Okay, so what started this off, before we conclude, is I wasn't confident enough to do actual reviews. I've got a lot of friends who, I mean, when I say professional reviewers, they've been doing reviews for a while. They have blogs and whatnot, and they get free games reviews. So I consider that,
Sure.
they've got the cojones to do all that. I didn't feel confident in that, even though I could. But likewise, I didn't really want to write a review. I mean, I can write,
Mhm.
but I'm dyslexic, so it takes me a bit of time to do it. I'm more, verbal and audio in regards to that. But I didn't want to shit on someone's game.
Mhm.
So what's the best way to do it? Well, I backed a lot of Kickstarters. I'm a game collector, so I've got a very
Mm.
large library. And so I'm like, well, I'm just going to do an unboxing, because they're, were popular at the time or whatnot, and they still are.
Right. Right.
And I'll just kind of give a general first impression, essentially, what anyone does if they go to a friendly local game store and look through a book. And I was, thinking of a name for it. And I'm here, first one, cheap little webcam. I'm standing in front of it, holding up the book like I'm in third grade class doing a book report in front of my face, and horrible sound and whatnot. I'm like, oh, God, this is going to sound unprofessional. And then ding.
Yeah.
So it's the title of that was, yet another completely unprofessional unboxing. And when I did the interview with the previous interview, it's like I'm getting it all set up. I'm like, I don't have no idea what to call this. I'm like, forget it. Just yet another completely unprofessional interview for this one. So,
I mean, I'm an unprofessional interviewee, so perfect.
right.
Works out great for me.
Fantastic. So yes, this has been yet a whoops, shit. There you go. Yet another completely
leave that one in.
Oh, it is unprofessional interview here with Michael Ross from the RPG Academy, and we will see you all again real soon.
Thanks for having me.